Let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer, where today we're diving into a really grim, dark Arthurian fable of the mind. We're going to track the harrowing psychological journey of a figure known as Sir Brain, specifically looking at his displacement into a realm called the Edge of Negation. What we're actually exploring here is a profound mythological representation of the human struggle against memory loss, told through the lens of a relentless, downward philosophical descent. It's a fascinating and highly structured account of how consciousness basically battles its own complete erasure. Now, what's really interesting here is how the text immediately establishes our setting. The author notes that the word negation has actually acquired pageantry. Right when Big Ben locked into place beneath the high noon of Geneva, Sir Brain's residual consciousness was cast fully into this river at the edge of negation. But you see, the abyss hasn't just presented itself as some empty, boring void. It's disguised itself. The abyss literally dresses itself up in the romantic tropes of an Arthurian otherworld, misted forests of black metal, epic landscapes, and it does this specifically to mask its destructive nature, making the final, brutal subtraction of the mind feel like a heroic quest.
Chapter 1, The Chivalry of Negation. Let's move to our first chapter and see how this psychological landscape actually builds itself.
Okay, so we really must ground ourselves in the fact that this Arthurian otherworld is purely metaphorical. Sir Bran recognizes almost immediately that this landscape is psychological, not spatial. The Edge of Negation translates the completely abstract terror of memory loss and mental overwrite into visual, mythic symbols. It becomes this interior theater where the mind, which is desperately fighting its own erasure, stages one last chivalric resistance against the dying of the light. Chapter 2, Armor of the Victorian Gentleman. Let's dig into the actual thesis of our Fichtean dialectic here, the illusion of control. So the crucial point in this phase is that Sir Brain summons the knightly armor of memory and self-regard. But here's the catch. This armor is already tarnished, and it's entirely ceremonial. It represents the last coherent image of the Victorian gentleman. That archetype of someone who deeply believed that transformation and progress could be neatly controlled and categorized. As our Fichtean thesis, this armor is a completely hollow symbol. It's consciousness desperately trying to impose order and smuggle some kind of purpose into a mechanism, the void, that simply never required it. It is ultimately the peak vanity of the mind trying to maintain its dignity while it's literally falling apart. Chapter 3, Gravity of the Dark Star. Because, as you'd expect, the environment actively fights back against this armor, bringing us to the antithesis of our fable. And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast between the passive failure of past beliefs and the active, pulling force of negation. As Sir Brain descends, he passes these ruined chapels whose altars hold absolute absence, just the faint impression of prayers that had been offered to a universe incapable of receiving them. In stark contrast to that passive emptiness, sitting at the exact center of the sky is the dark star. Now, it gives off no light, but it exerts an active gravity that orders every single shadow beneath it. And the gravity of this dark star isn't physical at all. It's entirely conceptual. It takes every structure of meaning you have, your narratives of progress, your comparative ledgers, even your soft errors, pulls them all in, and just spits them back out as useless ornamental debris. It turns out the universe doesn't care about our spreadsheets or our progress reports. In this light, the whole Arthurian setup becomes bitterly ironic. The questing posture, the very notion of exploration, are totally exposed as consolatory fictions. The realm essentially sharpens cynicism into a blade, demonstrating that the hero's journey has always had the exact same endpoint, featureless subtraction. Now, for the students of existential philosophy watching, I really want you to notice how this active, systematic mechanism of memory erasure fundamentally dismantles traditional, abstract nihilist doctrines. Nihilism here isn't just some dusty theory, it's an active, ongoing process. The realm attacks Sir Brain's memory with systematic precision. It tests every recollection, marks it for cancellation if it can't survive the dark star's gaze, and continuously redescribes the memory until it simply no longer supports the weight of care. Meaning isn't destroyed in one dramatic, catastrophic gesture. It is slowly, painfully redescribed until it means nothing. Chapter 4, Synthesis of the Dual Aura. Faced with this steady, erosive pressure on memories, Sir Brain has to adapt, creating a Fichtean synthesis. To answer this relentless assault on his memories, things like the tactile archive Alara had kept or the 7 days of honest flame practice, Sir Brain draws simultaneously on two opposing currents. He pulls from the honest flame and the residual dark fire still linked to his displaced consciousness. By forcing these two completely contradictory forces into a temporary cooperation, he produces an aura of negotiated endurance. This synthesis allows him to achieve a functional compromise within a realm whose absolute fundamental law is dysfunction. It's neither pure yield nor pure domination.
Philologically speaking, this aura is a compromise term coined under immense duress. It basically describes the harrowing state of continuing to walk long after the very reason for walking has been completely revoked. The self that persists here isn't some authentic, victorious core surviving a great trial. Not at all. It's merely a temporary coherence generated by pure friction between the honest flame and the dark fire. And that brings us to Chapter 5, Descent into Silent Erasure. As Sir Brain moves deeper into the psychological otherworld, the realm strips away the very last illusions. Philosophical tradition has long loved to distinguish between active nihilism and passive resignation. But inside the edge of negation, that distinction completely collapses. To keep moving forward under the Dark Star is neither an act of joyous affirmation nor an act of defeated surrender. It is simply the lingering momentum, the residual mechanical fact of a consciousness that hasn't yet been fully unwritten.
The reality of this descent is stark. Even the simple act of recording his surroundings becomes totally suspect to Sir Brain. He notes the ruined chapels without any hope of later use, recognizing that recording is just another desperate attempt to maintain a ledger in a universe whose sole purpose is to invalidate them. The aura flickers, but it holds. He learns the hard way that navigation is only possible as long as he refuses to demand that his next step actually means anything.
Which leads us to the ultimate, haunting, cynical insight of the text. The realm promises absolutely no revelation. None. It only offers the unconsoling clarity of featureless subtraction. It guarantees that every structure you carry into it, whether knightly, philosophical, or affectionate, will be returned to you in a form stripped of its illusion of purpose. You are just watching the still functioning parts tell themselves a story, while the rest of the mind is actively being erased.
It's a heavy, brilliant piece of writing, isn't it? I'll leave you with this provocative thought to ponder about the mechanics of our own meaning-making and how we armor ourselves against the inevitable void. If every knightly, philosophical, or affectionate structure is eventually returned to you completely stripped of purpose, what consolatory fiction are your still functioning parts telling themselves right now? Thanks for exploring this psychological landscape with me.